and please continue watching, because this next session is really a continuation of the same theme. So in the discussion, we can pick up on some of these questions too. And now over to Ambrish Arora.
Leave out the first minute. No. Just will it get on? Yeah, let's keep it. Yeah. I'm just very nervous because my mother-in-law is in the audience. Usually I don't. My palms are sweating.
Said we won't say a round of applause, but for her, we can give her a round.
Yeah.
Lights.
So we are 100 people practice. We don't know how we got here. And we do a diverse typology of projects: hotels, homes, bars, retail spaces, museums, schools. What's really, however, something that kind of we grapple with is how we got here and what will take us forward. So the practice, the work kind of gets shaped by so many forces. It started with this idea of survival. At least for me, I left home at the age of 16. I had no money and no degree. And I was just grateful to get what I did to make a living. And over a period of time, our practice has gotten shaped. It continues to get reshaped, and our work continues to shape itself. But one thing that we've been really looking for is what is it that keeps us anchored as a studio? And one of the first things I started my practice with was this, that it was really, I have this kind of karmic approach where you will get what you deserve, and your job is to bring your best to it. So even today, whether it's a bathroom, I mean, now we don't do bathroom renovations, but in the beginning we did, or we had a school to do, we brought 100%, and we continue to bring 100% of ourselves, no matter what the scale, what the typology, who the client is. And this has kind of morphed into a thread that holds the people together. So we try and, we are, like I said, we are 100 people, but we don't have systems and controls. Rather than that, we are looking at values that shape and hold why do we do what we do and how we do it. So these values, and you can read more about them on our website. We've written a lot about how these manifest in our practice. And the next layer is really what shapes our work. So we've spoken of regionalism, we've spoken of South Asia, but are there certain common threads that go beyond the identity, or actually tie together the identity of what it means to be in South Asia? And we have over the years tried to create certain questions that guide, that we run through the breadth of a project. So frugality is one such thing, the idea of keeping it easy and low tech, keeping our solutions progressive, but technology easy to access, adaptation, repair, reuse, this idea of durability, endurance, not just from a material and design perspective, but how do you build buildings that endure, in emotion, that people love and want to retain? That's a very important part of why a building gets retained. Again, a lot of our clients are high net worth individuals and luxury brands. Can we redefine that using indigenous materials, processes, and elevate the idea of craftsmanship, for instance, to do that? So I will run across certain projects which kind of take us through a short journey of how this worked out for us. And so this is one of our very early projects 16 years ago in a mall called Emporio, which is a luxury mall, where our neighbors were these very fancy stores with imported fittings. And we had a similar kind of space right in that vicinity, but at 1/10 the budget. And the designer was Rajesh Pratap Singh, who calls himself an elevated tailor, very humble man. And we said, look, if we could use a welder and elevate him to the level of a craftsman, what would that look like? So we worked with scissors, 12,000 scissors, with a welder, a set of welders, reconfigured them to create a simple painted tuna shell sandstone floor and a sleeve that became a house for his merchandise, and generated this idea of a lattice kind of frame, which became a definition of his identity. It really did what he sought to do. He differentiated and distinguished himself without trying to compete on finish, as you can see on the extreme right image. It's relatively crude, but very graphic and very evocative. Moving on to our first architectural project. Again, we were blessed and lucky to have this project. It's a 6,000 square meter plot in the walled city of Jodhpur with 3 old buildings that had been kind of used by 11 families at the homes. It had been altered and lost their heritage. We had to bring in 40 rooms for the business plan to work. So we needed something that was still relevant to Jodhpur and to the site, but answered contemporary needs of high FAR, dense kind of density of rooms, and did not interfere with the courtyard or these traditional buildings, which became the anchor for the site. So the traditional buildings kind of got restored in lime and stone and became the restaurant and the spa, etc. And the new buildings, in fact, were more of a challenge because we were trying to create a new vocabulary that worked with traditional skills and traditional materials, but did not ape the old, nor did we have the resources to ape the old. So our initial renders kind of were these double skin structures with balconies and non-air conditioned passages. And we took motifs from the site, and we needed to have the west face openable because it has views of the fort. To achieve these patterns, we would have had to use a water jet process, which would have actually been very fast. But we went back and aligned the client saying, look, the process is more important than the end. And we simplified the form. We had access to this stone from a quarry 10 kilometers away. We did this graded perforation, which the carvers could do in a 20 millimeter thick stone, which was the need of making them openable. So the shutters that you see are 420 kilos. They open manually, they're made locally by welders and stonemasons. And I mean, that's the result of the project. So you have a clear demarcation, and yet it kind of speaks the same language, and it has given Jodhpur a new way of looking at craft. And our collaboration with the craftsmen went beyond. A lot of the work we did there was not on a drawing. It allowed them to express themselves, such as this bush-hammered wall. So all the surfaces that populate the hotel kind of have this expression of the place, which comes from the people who inhabit the place. And that's a philosophy we've tried to kind of keep implicit in all our work consistently. And this idea that kind of percolates through the studio is that our processes, rather than being determinist and led by an author, are they participatory? Do they bring out the genius of the group? And a happy coincidence, we started rationalizing our work, and 2 square meters of the jali we did has an embodied energy, which is nearly 1/5 that of had we done a water jet cut jali, even though it would have done the same function. And so just the inherent sustainability of craft in our country. We briefly saw this yesterday in Benny's presentation. So a client came to us in Jaipur, and she wanted to do a Haveli for a jewelry store. And she said, this building I built 5 years ago, I don't like it. Can you bring it down and redesign it? And intuitively, we just felt it was a solid structure. It would be so wasteful to do that. It would have got us a greater fee and given us a better kind of result, I think, had we designed it ground up. But we chose to keep the structure. And in fact, we pushed back saying that, look, let's not demolish and repurpose. And we avoided emissions of 1.2 million kilos of carbon dioxide. And we ended up with a result that she's thrilled with. It is an iconic building. It uses arts and craft, and it builds on her narrative of her crafted jewelry without having had to go what would have been a tempting route. Can circularity be forward-looking? And that's something, Devashri, you asked. There's something there's a project we won a few years ago. It's a visitor center for the Mehrangarh Fort. And we were part of a group that were invited to pitch, and we've designed a building that actually can be reconfigured. So it sits on the hill very lightly with independent piles. It's a metal structure, and it uses the sandstone as a walling system, and there's no cement, no glue, no concrete. It's bolted together, and aside from the waterproofing membrane on the top, it can actually be disassembled and reused because it's a modular system. In fact, over the course of the project, over the last 18 months, it has undergone 3 variations. And because the program has changed, you see, as technology changes, ticketing changes, the technology for guides change, the use changes. So they have been able to open up parts of the building and reconfigure them and reuse them in the way it was intended to. And that's been a really interesting kind of learning for us. This idea of a grid, the idea of using a material in its purity. It doesn't have screed and plaster and glue that and silicon, which so we've had to do intense amount of detailing to make it work because it has air-conditioned rooms, insulated walls, and jali walls. The last project I'll talk about is a government project we were really fortunate to be invited for in Bhubaneswar by an enlightened client, the chief minister then. And it was designed for the offices and the farmers who it was made for. It was for the Directorate of Agriculture. We brought in the program of the citizens, and we kind of included the client in the conversation, saying that the facilities we do, the auditoriums, the galleries, the learning rooms, and the ground plane can be opened up to the city. So we moved the building up, we moved the offices on a stilted area. So the ground floor stays open way beyond the opening hours of the offices and becomes available as an amenity to the city. So that's how the building becomes porous. At a different level, we questioned, so they wanted us to do a modern building, which was air conditioned. We questioned the benchmarks of what is comfort. And there have been very interesting studies by ASHRAE and other on the idea of adaptive thermal comfort. And what's really interesting to see is that there is no standard temperature that is comfortable. We think there is. So what studies have shown that people's thermal comfort depends on the present context. You get used to air conditioning, you think air conditioning makes you comfortable. 50, 100 years ago, you had no air conditioning, you wore appropriate clothes, you ate appropriate meals, you lived appropriately, and you became comfortable. So studies have found that even 30 degrees with an airflow, fans, makes you comfortable. So 80% of this building is naturally ventilated. It is all got fans. It has a night purge system, so it draws air after 5 o'clock when temperature drops below 25 degrees. Entire night, the building gets flushed with cool air. There's a delta of about 10 degrees to 12 degrees Celsius at night temperatures. There's a big thermal mass in the building. It gets trapped in the walls, the furniture, the partitions. And in the morning, when people come back to work after 9, and when the temperatures go high, the louvers close, the fans come on, and the entire building is like an air conditioning HVAC system. So it cools people down. And by the time it warms up, it's time for them to leave home. So we've managed achieving an energy performance of 31 kilowatt hour per meter square per year, whereas the Griha SDG for 2030 is 110. So we're already at 1/3 the energy consumption that's projected for 2030 SDGs. And you can see we've done some measures at site. We validated it. So when it's 38, 39 degrees inside, it was 29 inside. At 38 outside, 29 inside with fans running, people were super comfortable. And there's no thermal shock moving in and out of these buildings. Of identity, it was meant to be an iconic building. How do you build iconicity? Using regional narratives. We turned to Ikat, the textile crafts of Orissa, used that as a motif, worked with 4 colors of brick, and generated a facade which has multiple functions. So it is a solar shading screen. It allows 100% of the daylight in. It is an iconic facade that belongs to the farmers and the people of Odisha, and it derives from the local arts and crafts narrative. Last but not the least, our love for craft and promoting that. And we pushed the idea again. So these were not part of the brief. We pushed the idea with the clients that can the government be a patron for the crafts? And how do we do that? So the entire ground plane was opened up as a canvas to 50 artisans. We involved a local architect who then created narratives around agriculture using carving, dhokra, metalwork, etc., all from the region, and generated a ground plane. So that's him drawing 1:1. So there were 50 artisans, 6 months at site, working and generating the craft. And I'll end with this, so I'm on time. Is there a volume? Can I put it up?
We were quite excited.
Sorry. Something. Yeah.
We were quite excited, with the quantum of work that would be generated if artisans, you know, together. And I think
that has been
big achievement.
a big achievement.
This building project
This
could
building
generate
project could generate
50 artisans
for about 50
for
artisans
continuous 6 months.
for a continuous 6
And
months. And
we actually got,
we
artisans who
actually
had
got
stopped
artisans
working
who had
with
stopped
the
working
traditional skills. We convinced them to
traditional
come
skills. We
and to
convinced them to come back
working again.
working again.
ଯୋଉମାନେ ବି ଆମର କାମ କରୁଥିଲେ ସେମାନେ ସେମିତି ଗୋଟିଏ ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରାଟା ସେ ଗୋଟିଏ ଭିତରେ ରହିଥିଲା ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରାଟା ସେତିକି ବିକଶିତ ଏଇ କାମ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରେ ବି ଦେଖିପାରିବା
It's a perfect setting for us
To bring in artisans and crowds. If you talk about farmers and if you talk about people coming from villages to this building, then you want to show them something that's familiar to their environment. And that is where craft comes in.
Thank you.